Welcome. My name is George Galey, and I have a company called Austral Estates Wines. And thank you so much for joining us for a few minutes. Just a little background on Austral. We started about 30 years ago, and we specialize in single vineyard and small estates from the Southern Hemisphere. So this is our logo, and of course Austral is Southern. The stars at the end of the logo actually represent what's called the Southern Cross, which is the navigational stars in the Southern Hemisphere. In any case, one of the reasons that we're doing this at this particular moment is that we're doing a special buy-in sale on our portfolio right now, which is 20% off. And that's pretty good on the importer level, certainly. And would like to give you some of the details on that. But basically what it is, it's 20% off on a pallet deal, 56 case deal, mix and match through our entire portfolio. So there's lots of stuff in there, including a new category, Uruguay, which I'll get to a little later. So anyway, let me just give you a little further background. I started the company over 30 years ago. After I graduated from college, I worked for actually 3 Fortune 500 companies in a period of 7 years. And I decided I was a little more entrepreneurial, so I decided to branch out from that. At the same time, I was fascinated by wine. I was really super interested in that. And in this transition period, I found myself spending some time in Australia and New Zealand and really getting to know the wineries there. So when I got back to the US, I decided to put a portfolio together and start importing. In order to get the company started, I started selling directly in Metro New York, which is where we're located. And I remember one afternoon, I was making a sales call on Union Square Cafe, and Karen King was the buyer there at the time. And so I said hello to her at the bar, and she said, you know, at the end of the bar there's Robert Parker. So I took a deep breath and I walked down to the end of the bar and introduced myself. And it was just a few minutes that we got a chance to speak. But at the end of it, he said, well, George, why don't you come down to Baltimore and I'll taste through your portfolio. So that was a big step, because the brands that I was working with were just new in the United States, and really no one knew anything about them. So this really brought a lot of, well, good point scores, but also a lot of visibility to those brands pretty quickly. And the one thing I learned from that was that scores do count. Whether you like them or not, they count. So what I'm trying to do now with the company is I'm trying to continue that close support with the press. So for example, when Michael Fragros, who's the winemaker at Chapel Hill in Australia, comes to the United States, I can arrange a personal tasting of his wines with Marianne Warbiak, who is the category taster for the Wine Spectator. Martin Bonifant comes from New Zealand. I can arrange these tastings, and these result in pretty good scores. So that's one of the ways that Austral tries to support our brands in the United States. The other, and probably the more important in the long run, and something I'm very proud of, is I've put together a network of brokers throughout the United States. And these are all seasoned people. When we have our monthly sales meetings, which we do virtually by way of GoToMeeting, I take notes. These guys know people and they're really good. So that's another market support way that we can help you sell the wines. Back to the basics, you know, when you think about it, it all starts at the vineyard. And another thing that you really need to bring to market these days is an authentic narrative. And part of that authenticity, I think, is on the single vineyard and small estate level. When a winemaker walks out of his winery and walks right into the vineyard, that is authenticity right there. And there's a certain directness of that winemaker trying to put together that vineyard with the winemaking right there. That is where that's where the sparks fly. That's where the excitement exists. You know, as an aside, obviously we're a smaller operation, but and I think the other thing is that there's room for everyone in this business, including, of course, the really big importers. But one of the interesting things is, if you look at the cellars, the personal wine cellars of some of those really large importing people, they have single vineyard and small estate wines in them. So if there's room in their cellar for the single vineyard and small estate wines, hopefully there's room in your portfolio for these same kinds of wines. So these are all things that we're trying to do. What's new? New for us is Uruguay, and two brands, Traversa and Artesana. I think one of the things that I try to do as an importer, and this can be kind of tricky, is I try to combine authenticity of the region, of the country of origin, that typicity, with a style that is going to be interesting to the American palate. And it took me 3 years, believe it or not, to put those two brands together. And in an emerging category, I think it's very important to have an introductory price point, a price point that can be done by the glass, because that's part of the joy of discovery, I think, of wine, is trying something new. How many consumers have tasted a wine from Uruguay? But we're talking about a wine here that has like a $56 FOB California. This is something that is easily accessible to by the glass. Going up the price points, a couple of points, is Artesana. Really, really good quality. I mean, these are just really stunning wines. But again, they have that availability to the American palate, which is part of that trial. That's part of that discovery. And I think that's an important part of it too. So anyway, there are various things that we're trying to put together here. For example, we're doing virtual tastings now, and we have like little teaser clips that you can show to your retailers to try to get them to do a virtual tasting between these winemakers and their own customers. So I think that's another way that we're trying to support this. A third way is this discount program that we have, which is what we call the Wine Stimulus Program. And again, you know, getting through this, we really hope at the end of COVID-19 that there's a lot of pent-up demand and there's going to be a surge in demand. And the other thing is, when we come out of this, you know, we haven't quite figured out how we're going to pay for all this national stimulus. And if you really look at the way the Trump administration operates, there's a good chance that they are going to reinstate the high tariffs on European wines. And so this would be a way for you to differentiate your own portfolio into something that is probably immune from that kind of high tariffs. So again, there's all kinds of things going on here, and we hope that there are some very interesting points here, and we hope that we can do some business together. So once again, thank you for joining us. Thank you so much.